Hit the like button.
Bling.
It's been
Cassette
nice.
11.
Thank you for tuning
Chapter
in.
53.
Please like, share, and subscribe.
Let me ride. Drive! Lena's freshly retrieved diamond stud fell back under the driver's seat as she threw her hands on the steering wheel and gunned it. What happened? She screamed. She'd heard one loud popping noise. A gunshot? What happened? She ran 3 red lights before Daryl shouted, "What are you doing? Lights, bitch! Lights!" She stopped right in the middle of the block between 58th and 59th Streets. Daryl climbed down from the Hummer and walked around the front. Lena sat there, shaking, too panicked even to cry. He hustled around to Lena's door. In the last year, since he'd been driving in the city, he'd been pulled over 12 times. 3 of those times, the cops had found a gun in the car and he'd wound up in jail. His license was suspended, which is why, when it was just the 2 of them, Lena always drove. But even in this adrenaline-charged moment, he realized running red lights on 8th Avenue at 2 in the morning in his brand-new yellow Hummer with DeMac license plates wasn't the move. And Lena was in no shape to drive. He opened the driver's side door, and Lena scrambled into the passenger seat. "What happened?" she shrieked. The tears were flowing now. "Somebody jacked me for my jewels." She was trembling. "And you shot him?" "No," Daryl said, looking in the side mirror to make sure the coast was clear. "He fired on me." He hit the gas. "But I think he hit Billy." "Billy?" Lena screeched. "Billy was there?" "He ran out just as I tried to get away. I think he got shot." Lena started hyperventilating. "DeMac!" she screamed. She always called him DeMac out of respect for his newfound success. "We had to call the cops." She pulled out her cell. If Daryl had learned one thing from Lamont, it was how to keep cool in pressure situations. He slapped the phone out of her hand. "We have to go back," she said, reveling in the drama of it all. The last 6 years of her life had been a dress rehearsal for this star turn. "He got Billy! He got Billy!" She saw Daryl's gun on the floor of the Hummer underneath her feet. "We had to call the police." "For what?" Daryl said coolly, adding a sarcastic, "You think they're gonna get my ice back?" "You were a witness," Lena said. She shakily lit up a cigarette. "No, I wasn't," Daryl said persuasively. "I didn't see a nothing. I came down, got in the car, and we left. We didn't see nothing. We didn't hear nothing. So why would we be going to the cops? And I don't want nobody knowing I got jacked." Lena agreed on that point. It would make DeMac look bad. But still, what about Billy? "But didn't you see anybody upstairs?" Lena asked. "Yeah, Sheila," he said. "And by the way, that guy you told her to go to for the belly button thing really fucked her shit up. She got a real bone to pick with you." "I don't care about that," Lena shouted, then took a hard drag on her cigarette. "You think Billy got shot? Maybe you can identify the guy." "He had on a mask," Daryl said as they continued to cruise uptown. "But you right about Sheila. She's going to tell the cops I was there. We need to get off the road. We need to figure out what we gonna do. And we need to dump the gun." Lena eyed him suspiciously as he worked this all out. "Nobody's at your father's place, right? He's in L.A. "Yeah?" Lena gasped. "Let's go there," he suggested. "You got your keys?" She nodded. "We can dump the gun, get ourselves together, and then call my lawyer." They parked the car in a garage near the Whitaker residence and went upstairs. Daryl showered. Lena chain-smoked 8 cigarettes. When he came out of the bathroom, Lena gave him one of the many sweatsuits that were still in her bedroom closet. They wore the same size. "Look," Darryl said. "We'll call my lawyer in a few hours if they say something about it on the news." That's how we heard about it. By then, the cops will probably be looking to question us. Us? Lena said. "I told Sheila you were downstairs in the car. We're in this together," he said pointedly. "We ain't gonna say nothing about me getting jacked, all right? Nobody needs to know about that. So we'll say I came down, jumped in the car, and left. We didn't see nothing." Lena nodded hesitantly. "Maybe we should just tell the truth," she said, blinking at him. She took a drag. "The truth shall set you free, Damac," she added dramatically. "Says who?" "I don't know, somebody. And you didn't do anything." "No, I didn't. Still, I don't want to be involved. But on the real, I need you to be with me on this." He stroked her long hair weave and kissed her. "You know I love you, right?" "You do?" He'd never said that to her before. She'd been waiting to hear those words. Now that he was famous, she was always on alert, fearing he might dump her to get with the T in PYT or something. "You my heart," he said. "You my rich bitch. So you with me?" She looked up at him with tears of joy in her eyes. This was the moment she'd been working toward. She was Damac's ride or die bitch. "I'm with you," she said. Lamont disembarked from his flight, feeling rested and with noticeable pep in his step. He checked his cell for messages. There were 48. His step became less peppy. 48 messages in 5 hours? And the hours were between 3 and 8 a.m. New York time. Something was wrong. As he began to listen to the first one, his phone started ringing. Allie C. flashed on the caller ID screen. He was approaching the escalator that led to baggage claim when he answered. "What's wrong?" "Where are you?" she asked breathlessly. "At JFK," he said. "What's wrong?" "We just got here," she breathed. "Stay at the gate. We're coming for you." He stepped on the escalator. "What's wrong?" "Gate 8. We're coming. Stay at the gate." "Allie." He looked down and saw Allie C. standing right there at the bottom. Imani and Big Ant were next to her. As he descended, he could see another security guy they sometimes used, Giant Toby, standing farther back and casting a shadow over them all. "I already left the gate. What's wrong?" He could see Allie C.'s mouth moving as he heard her voice on the phone. "Something happened to Billy." Then she spotted him, and it looked like she'd seen a ghost. She started rushing up the down escalator. "Go back!" He heard her voice plead through the phone as she rushed toward him. Allie C. was always dressed in something sleek and black, with her blonde hair perfectly straight. He looked at her now in jeans and a Hofstra sweatshirt, with no makeup and her frizzy hair sloppily clipped up. If he'd passed her on the street, he wouldn't have recognized her. He put the phone down at his side. "What's wrong?" he said to her anguished face. She pushed up against his chest and hissed, "Go back! Go back! Now!" He opened his mouth to say, "Why?" But his question was answered as the mob at the bottom of the escalator came into view. What? There was a pack of reporters wielding microphones. The fuck? The cameramen turned on their lights. Was happening? "Lamont!" the reporters yelled. "Lamont!" Allie C. knew there was no going back now. She grabbed his arm in a vice-like grip, and close to his ear, whispered hoarsely, "Make no comment." Ant and Toby swooped him up and practically lifted him off his feet, throwing elbows to clear a passage. "Lamont! Is it a kitty rap war? Who do you think did it? Lamont! Do you feel responsible?" In the pandemonium, he saw a copy of the New York Tribune in the plexiglass display box at the Hudson newsstand. There was a picture of Billy the Kid. The headline read, Wild Wild West 54th Street. The Kid, rapper, gunned down outside. Midtown Recording Studio. In critical condition. Lamont made no comment. They all piled into the Rolls limo and Carlos sped off. "What the fuck happened?" Lamont screamed. "Billy got shot," Allie C. said, trying to remain calm. Imani was crying. "By who?" "We don't know," Allie C. said. "It was outside the Hit Factory last night, early this morning, around 2. "At 2? What was he doing outside the Hit Factory at 2? Where the fuck was Percy?" "Sleeping upstairs," Allie C. said, as Imani continued crying quietly. "So how is he?" Lamont said. "Let's go to the hospital." "Lamont," Allie C. said gently, as Aunt and Toby looked away. "He's dead." "Where is Mimi?" Lamont screamed at the top of his lungs. He knew Mimi had been at the Hit Factory last night. "She's all right," Allie C. reported. "She found Billy downstairs and went with him to the hospital." "What?" Lamont snapped, his heart and mind racing. "She was hysterical, but the doctor gave her something about an hour ago. She's at home," Allie C. assured him. "She's probably asleep by now. Nate and Jordan are waiting at your place." Lamont slumped down on the seat. Billy was dead? Murdered? This could not be happening. This could not be happening. They all rode the rest of the way in silence. Lamont felt the stabbing pain in his stomach. Return with a vengeance.
Hit the like button. Hit the like button.
Chapter 54. They reminisce over you. For the funeral, Vanessa wore her black Christian Dior bondage suit with the cutout back. She waved to the crowd amassed outside the Frank E. Campbell Funeral Home on the Upper East Side. She dressed Mimi in a shapeless black dress. Mimi had been sleeping a little with the help of sedatives and crying non-stop when she was awake. Mama was sheathed in a black escada, respectable pumps, and a black hat with a brim so wide that Lamont, seated next to her in the front row in a beautiful black Armani suit, had to lean to the side. Grimy arrived just as the service was starting, with his wife, beautiful, hurrying behind. He had on an all-black custom-made ensemble with a small diamond cross over his shirt and tie, black wraparound shades, and a black wool skull cap, even though it was summer. As he swept down the aisle, his long black duster coat billowed behind him. He looked like he'd just escaped from the Matrix. Lena and Daryl, who'd been briefly questioned by the cops and released, didn't show. Irv Green had called Lamont the morning of Lamont's return from L.A., shouting, "A child has been killed!" The higher-ups at HMG were not pleased with the media furor that was building. Irv told Lamont to fix it. The chairman job was in jeopardy. Under the advice of a damage control expert, Lamont had been busy giving interviews to all comers. People were blaming him, pointing out that the Kid's first single was called Shoot. Larry King quoted some sample lines. "Called you, but your mom said you couldn't come to the phone. Shoot. Want you in the front of my range, but I gotta get my license. Shoot. Thinking about going pro, but I got no hops. Shoot." "It was a play on words," Lamont explained on CNN. "Obviously." "Hip-hop didn't kill the Kid," Lamont told Fox News. "Senseless violence did." Mama had suggested postponing the wedding. It wouldn't look right. And Mimi was in a bad state. Lamont refused. Everything was all set. "We're not going to let this murder go unsolved like Biggie and Tupac," Lamont told Newsweek. "An innocent child has been killed. I'm going to see to it that someone pays." At the funeral, the pastor gave the eulogy, and then Grimy got up. He'd had a third teardrop inked below his left eye. At this rate, his entire face would soon be awash in inky tears. He mumbled a few words, and then rapped a somber, haunting song about promise unfulfilled and laughter being silenced. It had everyone sobbing. Even Vanessa was on the verge, but she choked back her tears. So-called waterproof mascara never was. Her macho husband was crying enough for the both of them anyway. He knew NASDAQ had been following Daryl that night to grab his jewels. After he'd heard what had happened, Alonzo had tried to contact NASDAQ, but he couldn't find him. He hoped that his stupid prank hadn't gone awry and gotten Billy killed. But he wasn't going to tell a soul. Blood relation or not, Lamont would go medieval on his ass if he found out he was in any way involved. Lamont was openly weeping, a sight so shocking that it cut through Mimi's sedative-induced haze. When he grabbed her hand and squeezed, she put her arm around him. She resolved to pull herself together. He was obviously as broken up about this as she was, and they had to be strong for each other. In that moment, she realized she truly loved him, and she was doing the right thing by committing to him forever. "I love you," she whispered in his ear, and he squeezed her hand harder. The caravan of cars followed the horse-drawn carriage that carried Billy's casket through Harlem, as Billy's fans lined the streets to bid their final farewells, waving posters and chanting the words to his songs. Mimi rode in the rolls, velvet curtains drawn, with Lamont, Nate, Martin, the damage control expert, and a photographer who seemed to be working for Martin, the only one who'd been allowed inside the service. Out of his jacket pocket, Lamont pulled a tiny bottle that looked like it would contain eye drops and threw it at Martin. "What is this shit?" Lamont snapped. "It burns!" "They're glycerin drops," Martin said authoritatively. "It's not supposed to burn. I told you only a few drops." "Glycerin drops?" Mimi said, confused, but they all ignored her, too intent on reviewing the digital images on the camera. "Well, they worked," Martin said. "Yes," Nate concurred, looking at one shot. "These are some lovely tears we got going here." "But that one makes me look fat," Lamont said. "Look at my chins." "I could Photoshop it," the photographer said. The next day, Lamont was on the cover of the New York Tribune. It was a tight shot of his face, looking stoic and rather sculpted, a solitary tear streaming down his cheek. The headline read, "Tears for the Kid."
Disgusting. Hit the like button. Hit the like button.
Chapter 55. One More Chance. After waking from a 2-hour afternoon nap, Mimi showered and wrapped herself in the monogrammed frette robe that Allie C. had given her for Christmas. As she walked out of the bathroom, she was slapped in the face by a newspaper of some sort. "It counts!" Lamont shouted. "It counts!" Dazed, she bent down and picked up the periodical. It was a copy of The Globe. Lamont was sitting on the bed, clutching his stomach. She sat next to him and looked at the cover. The headline read, "Princess Mimi Got Cold Feet?" She flipped to the story inside and saw pictures and a timeline of her drunken night out with Gemini. At 11:15, there was a shot of her dancing wildly at Foyer with Gemini standing in front of her. At 1:45, there was a shot of her outside the club, eyes rolling back in her head, with Gem clearly trying to hold her up. At 2:01, there was a picture of them heading into the Four Seasons. At 10:15 the next morning, there was a long lens shot of her jumping into a cab outside the hotel, looking a full-blown mess. An hour ago, Lamont had come out of his office to find Allie C. in front of his door in a yoga pose, with Imani standing over her, exhorting, "Breathe, girl! Breathe!" They went into his office, and Allie C. nervously showed him the advance copy of next week's Globe. "What have I done to deserve this?" He'd raged, and grabbed his stomach. "Nothing." Allie C. had reassured him, rubbing one of his shoulders. "Nothing at all," Imani had whispered, rubbing the other one. Now, sitting on the bed, Mimi sighed. "I don't know what you want me to say." "Tell me you didn't fuck that smelly motherfucker." "I didn't," she said, completely offended. He grabbed the paper and violently ripped it to shreds, letting the scraps fall over them like gray confetti. "It wasn't me," she said, automatically parroting Lamont's favorite line. "What are you talking about? There are pictures. My mother saw you there." "Your mother?" "She saw you leaving the Four Seasons, and she said you lied to her and told her you were still at home in bed. Imani, Jordan, my fucking mother, all of them knew about this." "Oh, I didn't realize," Mimi said, feeling betrayed. They were all talking about her behind her back, and no one asked for her side of the story? Lamont looked about ready to go for her throat now that she was hemming and hawing. "I was there," Mimi admitted. With these pictures, there was no way she could deny it. "I got drunk, and Jem didn't know where I lived to take me home, so we went back to the Four Seasons. But nothing happened. I only lied to Mama because I didn't want to tell her I'd gotten so drunk or get into the whole story with her. I swear nothing happened. Ask Jem." "And you expect me to believe that? What do you think I am? New?" "Yes," she snapped. "I do expect you to believe that." "I don't believe you," he seethed. "Don't fucking lie to me. Tell me the truth." "I just did." Lamont curled up on the bed, clutching his stomach. It felt like Freddy Krueger was in there working overtime with a butcher's knife. Stab, stab, stab. "How could you do this to me?" he moaned. "How could you do this to me?" He crushed his face against the pillows. "I want you to admit it." "Then admit what you did with Olga." "I didn't do anything with Olga." "I didn't do anything with Jem." "Everyone is going to see this and think that you did." "Not everything in the papers is true. Tabloids especially. You should know that." Lamont buried his face in the pillows. "I can't believe this is happening," he groaned. She sat beside him, filled with regrets and questions and conflicting emotions. She felt awful for getting drunk and bringing this embarrassment on Lamont. And she kept replaying that night at the Hit Factory over and over in her mind. If only she'd gone looking for Billy 5 minutes sooner. She didn't want to think about it. The image of Billy lying out on the sidewalk, all alone in the dead of night, bleeding. But it was all she could think about. And still, everyone told her that she should be the happiest girl in the world, and that made her feel ashamed to admit, even to herself, that she wasn't. This was everything that she wanted, but not what she wanted at all. They had the wedding rehearsal dinner to get through tonight. But she wasn't sure anymore if she wanted to marry Lamont. She wasn't sure if she wanted to get married to anyone. "You know, I had this girlfriend once," Lamont said in a strangled whisper. "I dated her for 6 months. And one day, I realized she had never said thank you to me. Not for the dinners, the gifts, the vacations we took, nothing. And I was mad at myself more than anything. How did I let all that time go by without even noticing? So I took her out that night to the most expensive place in the city. We had a great meal, and at the end I said, 'Did you forget something?' She said, 'No, not a thing, I'm full.' And I said, 'No, not food. Did you forget anything else? Is there something you want to say to me?' She just looked at me, a complete fucking blank. I threw some money down and walked out, left her sitting there. And I never spoke to that bitch again. All the stuff she'd left at my house I had Imani give to the Salvation Army. He closed his eyes. I let all these bitches use me, he moaned. I let all these bitches use me. They don't give a fuck about me. No woman ever gave a fuck about me. Except my mother. Mimi was not feeling his pain. And don't you use them? What? They want you for your money, and you want them for their looks. As far as I know, you've never dated any average-looking girls with great personalities. Just because I like attractive women doesn't mean I'm using them, he shot back. You don't go out with attractive women, she said, pushing it instead of backing down as usual. You date only gorgeous women, and you expect them to look like they just stepped off the cover of a magazine at all times. They're supposed to add to your shine. Maybe they don't give a fuck about you because they know you don't give a fuck about them, not who they really are. Lamont stared at Mimi like he was seeing her for the first time, startled by her disrespectful tone. And you? I never used you, Mimi said. I love you for you. He squeezed his massive body into a tight ball. Then how could you do this to me? I didn't do anything to you, she said, and I really do love you. If you didn't have any of this stuff, I would still love you. You care about the money and all that. That's your thing. Is it? He said, sitting up. He flicked her ring finger. I don't see you turning down any of the jewelry I give you. She walked into the bathroom and got her engagement ring off the counter. Then she picked up her jewelry box, carried it over to the bed, and emptied all the jewelry into his lap. Here you go. Oh, please, Lamont snapped, swatting it all aside. You're just like the rest of them. Every girlfriend I've ever had says, he put on a high, whiny voice. Why do you work so much? Turn off your phone. Why can't we just be alone? Why can't you just relax? He huffed. But they're happy to accept my expensive gifts and be driven around in my cars and sleep on my Pratesi sheets in my fucking penthouse. You think that shit just falls from the sky? I'm out there from sunup to sundown getting this paper to pay for all of it, and no one appreciates it. No one. Lamont, Mimi sighed. Why do you want to marry me? I might not want to now. You want to marry me because I follow orders. I sing the songs that you want me to sing. I say the things you tell me to say. I wear the clothes you have people pick out for me. I have my blonde hair touched up every month, and I got fake tits because that's what you wanted. And whenever you say smile, I cheese it up. All that's part of your imaging, he snorted. And you wanted those tits. I feel like I'm living a false self, she said. False self, he muttered. Where had he heard that before? Someone else had said that. In a flash of recollection, he said, Have you been talking to some? Yes, she said, remembering their conversation and how much she'd related to what he was going through. He told me he was gay. I think you should let him come out. He wasn't supposed to tell anybody. He told me on the down low. Did you call him a faggot? No. Yes. He said it was okay. He said it was a term of endearment. As he stammered to spin the story even for her in the privacy of their home, she looked at him pitifully. I don't know what you said to him, but I think you hurt his feelings. He's very sensitive, you know. What do you mean? Lamont said, feigning ignorance. I told him it was cool if he was gay, just not to tell anybody. She shook her head and looked at him with those disappointed eyes that made him feel like a kid with his hand caught in the cookie jar. What? He said, shrugging. You know I love gay people. ALT is my boy, and I'm very active in the fight against AIDS. You like Andre because he can do something for you, because he helped me get the Vogue cover. And you go to those charity things because they're photo ops. But we both know that if you and Carlos caught a fag alone in a dark alley, watch out. He tossed off an unconvincing, not true. And there's nothing you'd like more than a pair of lipstick lesbians who are willing to do a tag team on you. That's real sexy, right? But that woman in Ali C's office, a no-nonsense, empowered lesbian, you call her a dyke. What are you now? He demanded, rubbing his stomach. A gay rights activist? Who the fuck cares? But let somebody cough on a nigga, and you're the first one talking about shut 'em down, boycott. Look, don't try to change the subject, he snapped, wanting to get back to a discussion of her cheating ways. She rolled her eyes, as if he wasn't the king of that. We're talking about you, he said. I created a strong image for you, and it worked. I promised you I was going to make you a star, and I did. What bothers me is that having your picture on the cover of the paper crying fake tears for Billy is part of your image, she said, looking him dead in the eye. Those were real tears. Don't con me, Lamont. I was there, she yelled. I saw you and Martin with your glycerin drops. I only use those for backup. Sitting on the end of the bed, her shoulders fell and she sighed. I would call you a liar, but I really don't think you know the difference between a lie and the truth. And that's what scares me about you. She shook her head. Billy is dead, she managed, putting her face in her hands as she tried to choke back the tears. Billy is dead, Lamont. He was 13 years old, and now he's gone. You had to give that picture to the paper, but I don't see you shedding tears when there aren't any cameras around. Do you even care? What world are you living in? He raged, slapping her hands down from her face. While you're in here unconscious like Sleeping fucking Beauty, the national media is trying to crucify me. My new job at Augusta was in jeopardy. When shit goes down, I have to be out there on the front lines. I have to hold it together for everyone. Don't you get that? Crying is a luxury I can't afford. You could cry in front of me, she said, wiping at her own eyes. She waited for a reaction, but got none. You talk about authenticity being more important than anything, but that's just a good soundbite. You talk the talk, but you don't walk the walk. Everything you do is for show. Everything is for money. A mournful silence. And I don't know if I want to marry someone like that. What are you trying to say? He snapped, as if she hadn't just been pretty direct. If she thought she was going to dump him, she'd better think again. That had never happened to him, and it never would. You're the cheater here, sweetheart. She was facing away from him, but she shot him a sidelong glance. Did you sleep with Emma? Immediately, irately. No! He'd given her the world on a platinum platter, and now all she could do was point fingers? Was she so blind that she could not see what a great thing she had? He was everything any woman could want, and more. She looked up into his blazing eyes. Lamont, why do you do this? She pleaded. I mean, I'm really trying to understand. Why do you lie to me all the time? I know you slept with Emma. Everyone knows. She pointed toward the bathroom. And she almost died right in there. Who said that? Everyone! Everyone who? He wanted specific names so he could deal with them. That is beside the point. The point is I know you slept with her, and then you insist that you didn't. Yes, she came back here one night, he said, sitting bolt upright on the bed. Yes, she overdosed in my bathroom. Yes, we had to revive her. He ran down the counts like he was submitting a plea in court. But I never had sex with her. She passed out before I could. So why didn't you tell me that? It was before I was with you. It didn't concern you. That's not the whole truth, she said, wondering why he could not just come clean. I know you slept with her. And if it was before we got together, then you should just say that. But I don't think it was just one time. You're always trying to hide something. I have nothing to hide, Lamont said, swelling with hubris. He'd done nothing wrong. So what if he'd lied about fucking Emma? If you gave a woman an inch, she'd take a yard and hang you with it. So what if he'd been getting the happy ending massage from Olga twice a week for the past 3 years? He'd always said that was his only time to really relax, and that was the truth. Didn't he deserve that small pleasure? And didn't everyone realize by now that oral sex was not sex? It meant nothing. He didn't know Olga's last name, and he didn't fucking care. He didn't know how old she was, if she was married, if she had kids, and that's why they got along so well. She showed up on time, did her job very well, and left. That's what he called a model employee. After Mimi got all upset, Imani had told Olga her services were no longer required. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to do anything. He ran this show, but he chose to do it for Mimi, because he cared so much about her feelings. And so what that he'd slept with Kendra a few, or more, times while Mimi was away on tour? Kendra fell under the category of been there, done that. Kendra was no threat to their relationship. She was his side piece, and as Mimi was so fond of saying, it didn't count. "Do you know I ran into Paula the other night in L.A.?" Lamont said. "She was all over me. I ditched her and she came banging on my door in the middle of the night. And you know what I told her?" Mimi looked at him like she didn't really care. "I told her, I'm getting married next week, honey. I'm taken." "Do you want a round of applause for that?" "This was the same night you were spreading your legs at the Four Seasons," he pointed out viciously. "Ironic, isn't it?" He looked at her cowering at the end of the bed and expected to hear another denial. But this time she said nothing, and that silence cut him like a knife. He realized he wanted to hear a denial. He desperately needed to hear it. He didn't want to believe it was true, but it was. Olga was nobody, and those slip-ups with Kendra meant less than nothing. But this thing with Gemini, that was clearly more than sex. How could she do this? He thought. How could she do this to me? She'd embarrassed him in front of his mother, his employees, and now the whole world would know. Had she had unprotected sex with that chump? He hadn't even thought about that. A disgusted shiver ran up his spine, and he was on the verge of heaving. He thought he'd finally found a sweet, pristine angel, a woman worthy of being his wife. And now he looked at her, and all he saw was another filthy common whore. How could he marry something like that? He didn't even want to touch her. "I have nothing to hide," he repeated, bile stuck in his throat. "You, on the other hand..." "You get rid of anyone who shows even the slightest sign of disagreeing with you. They disobey and that's it. They're gone," Mimi said. "People have to realize their actions have consequences," he said. "What happens to me when I don't want to sing the songs you buy for me? I hate almost all the stuff I've recorded for this second album. I hate it," she said. "No one respects me as a musician, and I don't blame them. I'm just this wind-up doll that sings on cue. People call me a low-budget Beyoncé." "That was one person," Lamont insisted. "One stupid critic." "I want to write my own songs," she said. "You think it's that easy?" Lamont sneered. "You think every debut artist comes out and gets the heat that you got? I orchestrated every detail and made sure you got the love you deserve. Mainstream love. You just prance through doing all the fun stuff while I'm getting my hands dirty laying the foundation, then doubling back to clean up the messes." "I want to do my own work," she said firmly. "I want to write my own songs." "We'll see about that," he muttered. "Will we? And what if I want to dress myself and wear my hair curly? Do I have to ask permission for everything? I don't like that arrangement anymore."
This ends side 1 of cassette 11. Please turn the cassette over and start side